Y'all are all cool. I didn't know David wasn't going to be here this morning, but you make us not miss him, so thank you.
All right, thank you.
And the singers, they get some of them get a Sunday off. They have to take a Sunday off, and I'm here. But that's I'll get them about that later. I mean the backup singers. But tell the person next to you, I'm so glad to be sitting next to you. High five 2 or 3 folks right quick and say, I'm glad you're sitting next to me. This amazing experience we call life, and I call it, as you've heard me say many times, a sexually transmitted disease, or dis-ease, a tension, and that's incurable, and that is terminal, because we all go through the transition we call death, or what we think is an end in this dimension. But it's not untreatable. This incurable disease is not untreatable, and we are all in treatment. And that's one of the reasons we come each week. This is part of our weekly treatment, sitting in here for an hour or an hour and a half or 2, and hanging out together and feeling the social energy that is, and synergy that is around us and within us and flowing through us when we're together. We are social beings, spiritual beings, sensual and sexual beings. And all 4 of those S's cooperate in the human experience. We are naturally drawn to each other, socially and chemically. We don't always realize why we're drawn to certain people. Sometimes the chemistry is a little bit different with another human being. Doesn't matter about of their particular race or gender. We just are drawn to people. And like my daughter and I went out to the animal shelter yesterday, Imagine and I, and there were certain dogs we were drawn to, and certain dogs we wasn't drawn to. And we were looking for something small, but there were larger dogs that we could almost feel that we could get along quite well with them. Madge loves animals, and she has been working at a veterinarian's office for several months, and almost all last year. So she wants a dog, so I took her out to look at one, and I was feeling the energy in the room of all the people. They sold about 100. They sold them for only $10 on a special yesterday. Normally it's $75 for a dog and $25 for a cat, and they're all spaded and they've got all their shots and all that stuff. I'd never been there before. And of course you could smell that dogs live there before you even get in there. And there are people, there's a lot of energy in that room, and a lot of odors in that room, and a lot of feelings in that room. But it was life. And most of us who have dogs or have ever had dogs, you know that a dog seems to have more unconditional love than any human you've ever been around. Yes. Right? Dogs is a man or woman's best friend. Whose best friend are you, and why? Dog is God spelled backwards, somebody said. I don't know if that's on purpose or not. That's only in this language. But whose best friend are you, and how? We're feeling a lot of unfriendliness in the culture, in the country. There's a lot of conflict. We all say we love this country. We all have opinions. This is an election year. So as I said last time, during an election year, you are forced to have, even if you don't express your opinion. And so this may be one of the most idolatrous times in the year, because opinion, if there's such thing as idolatry, is the idol. Your opinion may be the most pronounced idol or thing that you worship and work through and work with and defend or fight for, create for. We all carry these opinions, which comes from the Greek word ophthalmos, or ops for the word for eye, which means your view. Everybody has a view, whether you verbalize it or not. Everybody has an opinion, everybody has a perception about the election, about the country, about the pros and cons of a police officer, and the polis, or the citizens. Polis is like when we say metropolis, we're talking about a large city with citizens in them. And citizens come from the Latin word civis, where we get the English word civil, or civility, or civilization. We're all going through policies and police and polity and politics. More ticks than politics. Well, it varies. And we're all sorting through now. Today, really tomorrow officially starts the Democratic Convention. And we went through the Republican Convention. We heard all these opinions, and they were similar. And we're going to hear another group of opinions this week, and we'll all have them. We already have them. Many millions of people will watch the conventions, and their opinions will not change for any reason. They may be affected by a little bit, but they won't change. Opinions are something that we possess, but also opinions possess us. Talk to me, somebody. The theme for the month is conflict, and conflict is an incompatibility between two or more opinions, two or more idols, almost two or more gods that are fighting. It's sort of like a cosmic conflict. The cosmos of your thinking is in conflict or contrast to something else. It's two or more opinions or principles or interests. Psychology says that it's a condition in which a person experiences a clash of opposing wishes or needs. No one in here can say they haven't experienced that. Even this morning. Just the opinion of whether I'll go the extra 20 minutes. Oh, I heard your spirits loud and clear. No, some have opinions. I have nothing else to do. It's hot outdoors. Let's hang out here. Let's serve iced tea in a little bit and snow cones or something and hang out all afternoon, because some of you have nothing to do with your lives anyway. So Sunday is the do nothing with my life day. We hang out. We chill. We'll go get some lunch. We'll take it easy. It's too hot to do much. So opinions are often influenced by environment or by circumstances or situations in our lives. As a verb, conflict means to be incompatible or at variance. Sounds like marriage for some people. Sounds like the job that you live, that you work. Sounds like family reunions. The fact or quality of being different or being divergent or being inconsistent. All of us feel that, all of us are that. Life is a symphony of opportunities for expansion, punctuated by distractions or attractions. And that tension demands attention, which creates intention. There's tension in all of our lives. There's tension in this country. There's tension in this county. There's tension in our culture. The tension does draw attention, and then the next step we do is find an intention that responds to the tensity or the dis-ease of you being human. The disease that we call life. In supposedly the greatest country on the planet, the whole world knows that there's great tension and conflict in America. Not just racially, but politically, ethnically, educationally, socially, in every way. But it's not unlike other countries. Even though we are not a religious, we're not a country controlled by religion. We are a country influenced by religion. And religion, whether it's Catholicism or Protestantism, Judaism, Gentiles, Pentecostal, fundamentalist, Metacostal, Unicostal, whatever it is, we all have opinions. Turn to somebody and say, what's your view? Now, the view is different depending on which side of the building you're on. Depends on which direction you're faced. Sometimes, depending on what floor you're on. The higher floors have sometimes more of a panoramic vision, or you can see farther from the height. So you can't judge the person who doesn't have the same view as you, because they literally can't see what you see. Even though sometimes they're laying beside you in bed or sitting beside you or across from you in the dinner table. Actually, you looking at that person and the other person is looking at you, you're actually looking at opposing views, though you're not you may not necessarily have opposing opinions about the view. If I said get up and look out in the courtyard, y'all will go over on that way and you see the fountains. There's a little bit. So those of you would look out that window, you see the trees, and both sides would say it's beautiful out there today. And if you didn't know the temperature and hadn't been out, you wouldn't know that, because that can be a fall day, except the trees' leaves might be a little different, but it could be as bright and as beautiful, but a lot cooler. And we can't hardly wait till it gets there. Life is a symphony of opportunities for expansion, punctuated with distractions. Tension demands that attention. Now, experience is not only what happens to us as a person or as a nation, but it's what we do with what happens to us. How you respond to the situation with which you are confronted, or that you are in the front of, or that you're facing with. I've been doing a lot of thinking and deep probing and experiencing my country and my consciousness at different levels based on my views of things. It's hard to keep a positive view all the time, but I'm better at it. I resist negativity, not because there aren't such things as negative realities, but you must use the energy of negativity to turn it into something positive. That's how we've lasted this long.
Yes, yes.
With what you've already been through, you know you're a champion. Turn to somebody and say, you have no idea who you're sitting next to. Tell them, say, you don't know the iron constitution inside of me. I love that song, that scripture that says, if it had not been, that's an old song, if it had not been for the Lord on my side, tell me where would I be? If it had not been for the Lord, where would I be? Yeah. If it had not been for a different kind of destiny or for a different kind of reality, it hadn't been for some larger than life influence on me, I do not know where I would be today. I could be in a hospital today, or a penitentiary, or insane asylum. Or I could be at church if it had not been for the Lord on my side. There's no telling where, if you look at your life and kind of reflect back, what brought you to where you are? How did you arrive here? What journeys and paths did you take? If you live way out south where I do, you drive. Sometimes I drive down Yale and turn on 31st. Peoria, I dropped Majesty off at 9. Then I went back home and I drove down Peoria because it wasn't as crowded as it is right now, and not as crowded as it is when we get through. Some of you drove from the north side. Some of you had to go around 31st, and you live west of 31st between the river and here. And some of you don't know how you got here. You're just glad somebody brought you and you paid no attention. You don't always pay attention to things the same. You don't see things the same way when you're driving as you do when you're not driving. Whoever's the driver in your house, the driver sees something different than the passengers. Or you notice something. Ignorance doesn't always mean not to know. It means not to notice or to take or make note of. The word is actually ignorance. You're such an ignorant thing, we used to say. That meant you're ignoring what's very obvious. I'm here and you're not you're not making note of my reality. You're not making note of the fact that I'm here, that I'm living and moving. You're not showing any care. The whole thing about Black Lives Matter simply means all lives matter, including black lives. If you say blue lives matter, it doesn't mean that red lives don't. When you say blue lives matter, you're saying blue lives matter as a part of all the lives that matter. That just because we're in uniform, that doesn't mean we're a threat. Black Lives Matter says that just because I'm of a darker hue, I'm not excluded out of the large care for all people. You could say white lives matter. Same distance, same difference. I if I'm white and I do have Caucasian blood in me and Native American blood in me and Indian African blood in me, it's mostly, obviously, African. So I'm rooting for the Africans, you know. I was talking to Louis earlier. He's from Southern California, as I am, and when I was growing up in the 60s, we had Chicanos, which were Mexican Americans, and we had the Tijuaneros, who lived just a little bit south of where I was raised, 5 miles south of the 5 miles south of the Tijuana border, the Mexican border is where I live. So the Tijuaneros thought that the Chicanos thought they were better than them. So we had bloody fights. I wasn't involved in them. I was busy praying, but they had chains and knives and rocks, but they would come and stand outside my junior high school. There were some serious battles. Wow. And they were all Mexicans, but one were Mexican Americans and other ones were American Mexicans. Close. I'm an American African because I was born in America. There are some people, if you were born in African, you're an African American. You could be a European American, or you could be an American European. Depends on where you're born. Obama is an American African, even though Trump thinks he's an African American. Vote for him if you want to. That's your business. Life doesn't just happen to us. Life happens through us, and life happens as us. Say it. Life doesn't just happen to me. Say it.
Life just doesn't happen to me.
Life happens through me.
Life happens.
And life happens as me.
Life happens as me.
And you know what? You are the co-creator of your reality.
Yes.
There's creation, recreation or recreation, and procreation. Then there's co-creation. We are creating together here at All Souls. The key word is all. All souls. That doesn't just mean Unitarian souls or Mexican souls or black souls or rich souls or white souls. All souls united. Yes. Universally. Yes. Universe. One verse, version, or versification of the whole is the way I like to define that. All souls, Unitarian, universally. We're united universally. That's not just the name of a denomination. They have my name as bishop. Do I look like a bishop? What does a bishop look like?
Long dress, long.
I could have come in robes. I got vestments galore. You'd have thought I was a clown walking. I could come here. I got miters. And at certain times I am Bishop Carlton. I prefer to be called Carlton, but I'm going to be a bishop because in 1996 I was consecrated in front of 10,000 people with a whole college of bishops, most of my seniors. Older men and women, they came together and laid hands and they anointed me, and I had 600 churches over which I presided. So the name is there. Most of my members call me, from Higher D, call me pastor all over the city. Bishop is a title, but that's not who I am. That's some of what I do. Carlton is my name, not always my nature. Reverend, apostle, prophet, doctor, whatever somebody calls you, black is my color. It's not really my color, it's the culture. Black is not a color, it's an experience. Talk to me, somebody. We all sort through what all that stuff means. We say black and white. White folks ain't white, they pink. And some of them have red around the neck. We all colored. Black folks ain't black, we navy blue or tan. There's all kinds of shades and levels of complexion and complexities. They vary as we live. Now, many people, including all ethnicities across the spectrum, are shocked and appalled at the tragic and repetitive shooting and killing of unarmed, non-violent African Americans by white law enforcement officers with what appears to most as random, reactionary, racist, and or paranoid, knee-jerk, trigger, happy, trigger, hyper tendencies. There's equal frustration with recent random and understandably reactionary shootings and killings of law enforcement officers by angry African American armed forced says veterans. Thomas Jefferson wrote, when injustice becomes law, resistance becomes duty. When injustice becomes law, resistance becomes duty. The stop and frisk laws need to be changed. Sensitivity training must increase, and law enforcement officers must not be licensed to break the laws while supposedly enforcing them. I watched several videos this week of white people, if I could use that terminology, confronting unruly law officers in Arizona and different across this country. Many of them were women. They would get right in the officer's face and humiliate him, talk to him like he was a child, because these particular people knew the law, knew the First and Second Amendments, knew who they were, knew what they could say, knew how they could do it. Is that God calling me? I thought he called me years ago, but sometimes I get a text from the Holy Ghost every once in a while.
Oh, glory.
But there was a whole group of all these white people confronting them, like in Arizona in the town hall, and they were refusing to show their identity, their identification, because you don't have to show the identification if there's not reason to suspicion you. They were shouting that out. The police officers were getting intimidated. Many of them walked away, and they were very confronted repetitively, and there's hundreds of times. See, black people are not the only people who are unhappy with what we consider police brutality. More white people are killed by white officers than black people are killed by white officers. But the media doesn't tell us that. But I thought about, as I watched the encounters, would people of color be as confrontive to the police officer, shouting out their rights? No, because especially before we had cell phones and cameras, they can't get by with that kind of stuff as quickly. But when a white person confronts a police officer, in the subconscious mind, and I can't speak for white people except the little bit of me that is white, I'm talking about that little bit that's white and pays taxes. It's like, I'm a white tax-paying American. You cannot arrest me. You cannot handcuff me. I'm not getting out of this car. I'm not showing you my ID. You cannot racially profile me. I'm white. We're not a race. We run the thing. We own everybody. Now, you don't mean say that, but in the back of your mind, it's difficult for a non-black or not person of no color to experience America the way people of color do. That's not always prejudice. Prejudice means to prejudge, to judge before you've experienced. If you see an integrated couple, you tend to glance a second thought, a second look. Not because you hate the integrated couple, or if you see a same-sex couple, you notice it. You might look and just see, would you do something like that? Would you marry? Would you go out with a person of color, even on a friend? If you walk into a restaurant and you're not dating, you're just with a coworker who's of a different race. Are you self-conscious about that? Sometimes you forget it until somebody brings it up. In Oklahoma, it's still very unusual to see interracial couples. Now, notice on television they're showing it more and more in commercials. It's amazing the subtle impact that that's having on a generation that doesn't see race the same way. We see race, but not the same way. I am not intimidated anywhere by confronting a few years ago. I would have been maybe, because if I came to South Tulsa a few years back, especially after 6 o'clock at night, I would have been more careful not to come. When we started our church in Jinx, Oklahoma in 1981, there was a law still on the books that said blacks could not be in the city limits past 6 o'clock at night. So we debated on whether or not we'd have Sunday night service. When I bought the building, I didn't go myself. I sent my white associates to the bankers and the realtors, and they did all the business. They did not know that the president of the corporation was African American until I walked in the bank in living color, signed the papers. And told the white people that worked for me to come on, let's go have lunch. Now, we created something that was pretty powerful in South Tulsa. Still, many people don't know the worst race riot in American history occurred right here. But look how we're getting along. Or are we getting along? How many of you how many of you non-black people, like for instance, some black folk would come by this church and they would see the few blacks who are in here and say, oh, so you going down there to the white man's church? Oh, you think you better than us. That comment right there says that person thinks white people are better than they are, or they wouldn't say that to you. So you think you better than us. You going down there and all souls, they don't even believe nothing down there. And you going to that church. I did it at one time. You judge people based on, you prejudge, I should say. That's where prejudice comes. You prejudge them and you've never even experienced them. How many of you have sat with a person not of your race? I didn't see sat on, sat with, right? How many of you have friends that you're very casual with that are not of your race? Of course, this ain't First Baptist downtown. Well, of course, we expect that of you. We expect a better attitude in this church than other churches, simply because it is uniquely defined, uniquely designed. Our theology is different, our sociology is different, our spirituality is more expansive, and we're growing into whatever that means. We say we don't have beliefs, but we believe a lot. Yes. We just don't like believing lies. Talk to me, somebody. Yes. So now my advice in this whole situation is that we not just deal with the symptoms of our national pain, but what may be the source of these social maladies. Yes. Where there's fruit, there's root. That's right. Anger is a signal emotion. It's a secondary emotion to hurt, usually. Somebody flying off the handle, that signals there's something in that person's life. A commotion, an emotion, a devotion in their life that is not making sense to them. How many would say, honestly, you have a temper? Okay, you guys go to the head of the class because you're the only honest ones in here. Well, we all have tempers. Some of us are more temperamental than others. Yeah. Some of you just get ticked off really quick. Some of you are so laid back, so cool, it takes a long time to get you really angry. But oh, when we do. I always say when they take them glasses off. They don't say much. They start moving things around. They start pulling curtains that don't need to be pulled. Shifting things that don't need to be shifted. They fixing to knock your head clean off. They're just about a second from going off. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Yes. There's some people that are not going to be angry as some of us tend to be. Jesus said, lay the axe to the root cause. And let me tell you something about law enforcement before I finish. I have 20 more minutes. The number one killer of police officers in law enforcement is suicide. In this country, the suicide rate is higher than the homicide rate. We should be concerned about homicide, but I'm also more concerned about suicide. More people kill themselves than kill somebody else. I don't have all the statistics of who those people are, the suicidals. But most of them ain't black, I can tell you that. Black folk don't kill themselves. We'll kill you first before we kill ourselves. We scared, but most black folks scared of going to hell if they kill. The number one killer of police officers in law enforcement suicide occurs 1.5 times more frequently compared to the general population. The last full year study was in 2012, but here it broke down the 126 suicides into these following statistical areas. Watch this. Average age of officers dying by suicide was 42. The average time on the job for officers dying by suicide was 16 years. What had they experienced in 16 years? It wasn't just on the force, but what was happening at home, what was happening in their mind. But remember, these are law enforcement agents. 15% to 18%, about 150,000 officers, suffer from post-traumatic stress. That's a large percentage of people legally authorized to carry an arm. They can kill you legally, and they're suffering PTS. Some of them have been soldiers. I wouldn't give a gun to somebody that's suffering from post-traumatic stress untreated. And even if it is treated, you don't know if they're taking the pills. But that's the way the system is. So here's a man and many women, licensed with badges, dark, cool sunglasses, helmet, boots, motorcycle, squad car, testosterone and ego, bad and mad. And you tick them off. It doesn't matter your race if you tick them off. It doesn't matter your gender. If they got issues. If they have issues with women and a woman goes off, you saw that school teacher that was slung to the ground? She was slightly resisting. And I say to any particularly African American, don't resist. Just let them take you down. Because even if you're not resisting, they might start saying, stop resisting, stop resisting, stop resisting. Good thing we have these cameras. Because if they're shouting, stop resisting, and you hear that, then they have an excuse to arrest you because it's illegal to resist arrest. 91% of suicides were by male officers. So there's a tension there. These kinds of things should be vetted clearly and succinctly and consistently before you put a badge on somebody. We're dealing with, just because a police officer is trained and licensed, that doesn't mean that he's the healthiest person or that he doesn't have any problems in his life. He may have outstanding warrants or tickets, or he might hate his house life, home life. I have many friends who are police officers who have been, plus soldiers. We're dealing with a situation in our country that cannot be dealt with from the surface. We've got to go to the root cause of why all this stuff is happening. If you heard the conversation of the police officer who was taking the young lady, the school teacher that he had thrown on, was it North Carolina or someplace, or Florida? Where was it? Austin, Texas? Yeah. I almost wanted to call it awful Texas, but Austin is one of my favorite cities in Texas. Threw her down. The other one was saying, you know why we did this to you? Because black people are more violent. He didn't think that black people have been more violated. Violent people tend to have been violated. Some of those dogs yesterday had been wounded and mistreated and violated, and they were very sheepish, and they were afraid of us walking down. You wanted to hug them, but they weren't. They wanted the hug, but they didn't trust the hug, because sometimes before, somebody who hugged them also hit them. Somebody who hugs you can hurt you. Somebody who hugs you can hate you. In fact, nobody can hate you or hurt you like somebody you love or who loves you. All of us know what that's like, just in family reunions. You deal with hurt. It's common. 91% of suicides were male officers. 63 of officers dying by suicide were single. So marriage must help. I hadn't thought about it. 63% of officers. You can read a lot into that. What made the male, single male feel alone or rejected, or you don't know what was behind him. He's cool. He's a police officer. He ought to be able to get any woman he wants. He got his stuff together. He's licensed. He got a badge. He's had of the treatment, and he can't get nobody, or he can't keep anybody. We don't know. 11% of officers dying by suicide were military veterans. Firearms were used in 91.5% of police suicides. He took his gun and shot himself. That's all of this. These statistics are something to march about or talk about. All lives do matter, but this is a situation that makes us study why we have law enforcement as it is without giving it more attention. We should pay them more and train them more. Same with school teachers. School teachers don't have a badge. They don't have a helmet. They don't have a peace. They be killing somebody too, probably. Some of these crazy kids in these schoolrooms are, standing and cussing the teacher out, and you can't do anything, and insulting them and fighting them. Now, where we came up, there was corporal punishment. It was legal. It isn't today, but in my neighborhood, it was nothing unusual. In my junior high school gym, when we undressed, there was nobody even thought anything in a predominantly ghetto area for the black brothers to have belt webs on their arms or back, marks from cords, from iron cords or rulers, switches. It was like tattoos. Everybody had one. If you didn't have any marks on you, we didn't think you had parents in our community. Because we didn't just get whippings, we got beat. But who taught us to whip? We didn't learn that in Africa. Beating the blood out of you? I used to hear that in my house. I'm going to beat the blood out of you. Where did that come from? Study the African culture. Nowhere on the continent was that a common practice.
Lord have mercy.
We learned it from slave owners and transferred that energy into our culture more than the white culture. Though in Oklahoma and most places in the South, kids get whipped. How many of you came from a generation, y'all don't know anybody whipped, but how many of you came from a generation, non-black or black, that where people got whippings? Spankings. Then we got in Dr. Zeus, or whatever his name, told us to stop whipping. Now it's illegal to physically handle, and sometimes it doesn't need. I haven't whipped my kids very often because I didn't need to. The first one said, "Don't let it happen again." I'm not a beater in that sense, but if I had to, if they absolutely refuse to obey, I'd rather discipline them in love rather than a police officer drag them down the street and beat them. I'd do it before I'd let somebody else do it. I haven't had to do it, but if I had to, I would. I'm old-fashioned. You don't talk to a parent that way.
That's right.
Teach them authority in the home, and they won't dishonor it outside the home. When they call all these kids in that's doing all these killing, sometimes they ought to bring the parents in too. And let's have a discussion here. Let's stay away from violence as much as we can, but teach them to respect authority. Sometimes I can talk to a kid I've never even seen. I change the tone of my voice. All right, that's enough, boy. Sit down. And the mother's standing right there. Junior, just stop that. I've done it in the grocery store. I can't take it anymore. Hey, boy, you hear your mama? I'll be getting my groceries. I'm going to get on out of there, but... I saw my mother one time. We were in London, and my mother was anybody's kids. We were in London, and there was a little boy, the host. These people were so kind. They were to give us a tour of London. They had the most unruly, obnoxious little kid we'd ever seen. They were from Africa, but they lived in London, and they were sweet, sweet people. And we were walking across the street right near Trafalgar Square, and I was with the couple. We were just casually talking, and right in the intersection, I heard a little kid screaming. I turned around. My mama had stopped in the middle of the intersection, was tearing his tail. I kept walking faster. Come on. We never had another problem with that kid the whole week we were in London. And his parents wrote me a month later and said, "I don't know what your mama did, but it worked." See, we were raised with a Bible and a belt. If they couldn't preach the gospel in us, they'd beat the devil out of us. I'm almost finished. 11% of the police officers dying by suicide had legal problems pending. Law enforcement officers also have legal problems, whether that's domestic or taxes. Some of them are closet alcoholics or drug addicts. Who are these people? What world do they live in that we're insensitive to? If white people, I'm using that term advisedly, if you see a gay couple and you're afraid of them or you're intimidated, or a gay person and you know they're gay, instead of running from them or judging them, try to engage that gay person in a conversation. Let them talk to you. Tell you of their pain if they have it. And usually they do. When did you first realize you were gay? What does this mean? Talk to me. Before you judge them. If you meet if you've never had a one-to-one casual repetitive conversation with a person of color, or if you're afraid of white, I don't do white things. I don't hang with the white people. They do their thing, I do mine. That's the wrong attitude. Because you've judged the whole white race. So my best friends is white people. Get to know somebody. Have an engaging conversation. If you have neighbors or you work near somebody, sit with them at lunch. Somebody you don't know. I told you I made my son, we always, in Chicago there's more panhandling than you'll ever see in Tulsa, but where we lived at that time downtown, at the outside the Walgreens, there was the same guy for weeks asking money. I taught my children to be kind and to be generous. And so they saw me giving all the time. So they started giving. And I said, son, do you notice that when I give to a person who's panhandling, I always make eye contact. I smile, I nod. I say, hello, good morning, good afternoon. Sometimes I say, what's your name? He says, yes. I said, all right, I taught you how to give. Now I want to teach you better about how to live. I'm not going to tell you when to do it. But one of these times, when you put money in that man's hand, always look him in the eye, but ask him his name. Sit down and have a conversation with him. Will you do that, son? He said, I'll do it, Dad. I didn't know whether it was going to take 10 or 2. The second time, Julian sat down with the man, found out his name, had he ever been married, did he have children, did he ever fight in the war, where he used to live, does he have any contact with his family? He knew the whole story. And they would hang out and talk, and chat. Eventually they moved all those panhandlers away, so we don't know where he went. But we knew where he lived downtown, under which bridge he would sleep. And my son's appreciation for the human experience changed dramatically because of that. And now I don't judge street people. You see them, a lot of them are criminals. I mean, they just don't want to work, and they're out here begging, saying, you know, God bless you and pray for me. They know in Tulsa those terms are like magic. It's like a politician says. If the politician in this culture says that he's a family man, that means family values. That usually means he's conservative Christian. We understand that gets a vote. If you don't say God bless America or talk family values in this political system, you're not going to get voted. Now, those are word phrases that people use. Wrap your arms around yourself. I got to stop. There's a racist living in all of us. It's not always a poison, venomous racism or racist, but as long as there are races, there's going to be racism. We have to accept that. What we work on is defanging the racism, the sense of superiority. It's all right to acknowledge diversity or difference, different religions, different cultures, different characters. But when you demean somebody or elevate yourself over that person, you've crossed the line. Sometimes we do it inadvertently. We are basically judgmental because we all have opinions. And most of those opinions we adopt from our parents. I heard my dad come home from work, never with venom, but he would speak of being mistreated on a job where he worked 16 years and taught 4 of his foremen how to do the job, but never got an increase. My dad had my mother sew creases in his pants, in his uniform, so when he left, his kids would see him in a coiffed, starched uniform with a crease down his front. Daddy always looked clean and neat, cleaned his fingernails, made sure he smelled good. He always earned it. He was a janitor many times, or custodian. I would help him clean restaurants, my brother and I. But Dad earned the respect, not just in his wardrobe, but in his character. He identified to warn us of what might happen to us when we leave the house, but Daddy never, ever imparted any kind of bitterness, inferiority complex, or victim consciousness to us. He faced the reality that was there. And you got to do it too. Turn to somebody and say, I'm bad and I know I'm bad. Sometimes you have to say, I'm mad and you know I'm mad. We do get angry, we do get hurt, but we manage our pain. We walk through and work through it together. That's what we're trying to do here at All Souls. And we're having great success, better than most other places. Few other churches would you ever see a Black Lives Matter reference on the sign, even if that may have made some people uncomfortable. Or Blue Lives Matter on the sign. Any church. You won't even go up to the north side and see a lot of churches that have Black Lives Matter on their sign outdoors. We are trying to make a difference. Keep playing soft because it makes me stop. It's a cue for the altar call. Here's the way I'm going to close this with prayer. Let's pray. How many of you will honestly tell me that you know that you deal with prejudice? Okay, that's good. That's honest. Thank you. How many of you will honestly tell me that sometimes racism lives in your thinking? I told you last week, I would see if I saw two men fighting when I was a little kid. If it was a black and white, automatically I wanted the black one to win. I didn't have to know his name, his nature, his culture, whether he was married or single, if he was a wife beater or if he was a child molester. It didn't matter. As long as he was black, I wanted him to win. That was just natural. If it was two white guys, I wanted one of the black trunks to win. Or if it's two black guys, I wanted one of the black trunks. Now, that's a little ingrained racism. But it's not the full definition of racism, because I didn't see one. In fact, I actually felt one was considered inferior, and I wanted the inferior one to win. I judged him, my own brother, inferior, and didn't realize it. That's the part that's racism. Turn to someone and say, I'm just as good as you. And say, and almost as good looking as you. Stand up all over the room. We're going to stretch real good. Let's shift that energy around. Oh, we all need adjustments. I went to a chiropractor first time in a while. Me and Dr. Cole, I didn't realize I had a little arthritis in the neck and the lower back. I went in for pain in both places, and I wasn't there long, but boy, then I had a massage after that. Sometimes you need deep tissue massages, emotionally, as well as physically. Every once in a while, it's good to go several times a year to a chiropractor just to get realigned with your own self and your own soul. We do have discs in our lives. I was talking to somebody the other day that was complaining about mold spores in the house. I said, sometimes there are mold spores in the head, or mold spores in your heart. Anybody ready to get a new cleansing, a renewal of yourself? All of this that's going on in this country is really going to purge us of things that don't belong here any longer. When we get through with this election, we will re-identify ourselves as the United States. And all of you that have your Canadian passports and stuff, in case, some folks said to Mr. Trump, "You don't put the wall up before I go over there, because I'm going to Mexico if you become president." Let's pray together. Thank you, eternal intelligence, the God who is our Father and our Mother. Thank you for peace that really does pass all understanding. Thank you for intelligent illumination about the realities of who we are and how we live, that we get beyond believing, belonging, and behaving, and extend ourselves to becoming. Thank you, Lord, that we can evolve, each one of us, into more expanded, deeper experiences as people. Thank you for All Souls Church, the Unitarian and Universalists in the more metaphysical appraisal, that we can unite ourselves. We can be united without uniformity, that we don't have to go along to get along, that we can mind many of the same things without having the same mind about everything. Thank you that we have this chance to be individuals and to cooperate and to cohabitate and to coalesce as human and humane entities on this planet. We love each other in the name and nature of all that's good and God, in the Christ consciousness and calling. Thank you, God. Amen. Hug somebody, love somebody, tell them they're wonderful, and it's time to go.
We are your church, and we are proud to be your church, or at least a church that's having a positive impact on your life. I am personally blessed to be your minister, or at least a minister who you're allowing to speak into your life. I hope you'll support our ministry and share your love beyond belief by texting LOVEBB to 41444 or go to our website. But you can just text LOVEBB to 41444 and make your gift. It's wonderful. Thank you. Be blessed and be a blessing.